Our top story this hour, Israel shows no sign of letting up its bombardment of the Gaza Strip despite U.S. calls for less indiscriminate bombing. Officials say overnight Israeli strikes killed or wounded dozens of Palestinians, including women and children. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan held talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Sullivan reportedly called for a scaling back of Israel's high-intensity operations. Washington has provided tens of thousands of bombs that Israel has used in Gaza. Since October the 7th, nearly 19,000 Palestinians have been confirmed dead and thousands more are missing in the rubble. 1,200 Israelis died in the start of the conflict. For more, we're joined by Philip Prather from the Associated Press in Jerusalem. Hello there, Philip. So U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan has urged Israel to focus on precise targeting of Hamas leaders and on intelligence-driven operations. Is there a time frame for this new phase?
No, there certainly isn't a precise time frame, though I think it's fair to say that what the Biden administration wants and seems to have made clear to the Israeli government here is that it wants this military operation by Israel to be wrapped up as quickly as possible, at least what we're seeing right now, which is large-scale bombing all across the Gaza Strip and ground forces who are fighting Hamas terrorists in both the northern city of Gaza but also the southern city of Khan Yunis. What we're seeing, though, here from the National Security Advisor from the White House, Jake Sullivan, who's been meeting Netanyahu, his war cabinet, and other members of the Israeli government, is that he seems to agree with the assessment from the Israeli Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, that it's going to take several months to destroy Hamas. There has been clearly frustration voiced by the Biden administration and their want for the operation to move from what the U.S. President Joe Biden himself called indiscriminate bombing to more precise strikes against military infrastructure of Hamas, but that doesn't seem to have happened yet. The military tactics used by the Israeli army don't seem to have evolved. Those airstrikes continue. The civilian death toll still is very, very high, though the Israeli Defense Forces, the military, in the last few minutes actually said that it completed a set of airstrikes against terrorist infrastructure in Rafah. Rafah is precisely the town on the border with Egypt where civilians had been told by the Israeli military to go to be safe from airstrikes, but it is precisely that town that has been struck repeatedly by the Israeli military. Meanwhile, we heard today also that the remains of 3 hostages were returned to Israel from Hamas captivity. They include the remains of 2 Israeli soldiers and 1 French-Israeli civilian who was kidnapped when Hamas first attacked on the 7th of October.
Philip, tensions between the two sides are also high in East Jerusalem and the West Bank. What can you tell us on the conflict there?
Well, look, here in East Jerusalem, this is something, the tensions that are felt rather than seen. There have not been any large-scale raids by the Israeli military here, but there have been in the West Bank. A 2-day-long raid led to several Palestinian deaths there, and a number of those who've died in those Israeli military raids since the 7th of October is very high there as well. It's at around 270, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry in the West Bank. Now, we spoke earlier about the White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. His next meeting, by the way, is with the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas in the West Bank. They'll be talking about the future for the Gaza Strip once this Israeli military operation is over, though, of course, that could take a very long time. It would appear that it's clear that the Biden administration wants a significant role for the Palestinian Authority. It wants it to be revamped, in the words of Jake Sullivan, and it also wants Palestinian security forces to be present in the Gaza Strip. That is not something that Israel wants, and the United States has made it very clear that it does not want Israel to reoccupy the Gaza Strip. The Palestinian Authority lost control of the Gaza Strip in 2007. That's when Hamas took control of that area.
We will be closely monitoring the situation there. Thank you so much, Philip Prather, reporting from Jerusalem. Appreciate it. The UN warns of the deteriorating humanitarian situation in Gaza as the region is in desperate need of aid supplies. Philip Lazzarini, the Commissioner General of the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine, witnessed how hunger has ravaged the besieged region.
People, and this is also something completely new, People are stopping aid trucks, taking the food and eating it right away. And this is how desperate and hungry they are. And I witness this firsthand. Hunger is something people in Gaza have never, ever known before. But hunger has now emerged over the last few weeks, and we meet more and more people who haven't eaten for 1, 2, or 3 days.
Lazzarini also said the aid in place cannot meet the huge demand in Gaza, and the situation would worsen by the day. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says it's distributing the limited aid supplies in Rafah near the Egyptian border. It's estimated that half of the 2.3 million Gazan populations are currently staying there. The office says the aid distribution in other areas in Gaza have almost all been suspended due to the military offensives and the road restriction. Here's what local residents have to say.
We have some money, but aren't able to get food for the children, even if you can find something. It's too expensive. Since the war began, price hikes have been hard on people with jobs, as well as the unemployed. Even rich people will find prices hard to take.
The rain has leaked into our tents. We can't sleep. We tried to find nylon cloth, but we didn't find any, so we can only sleep on stones and sand.
Meanwhile, the U.S. and Turkish Presidents Joe Biden and Tayyip Erdogan spoken on the phone by Thursday. They discussed the Israel-Palestine conflict and Sweden's application to join NATO. Turkey has criticized Israel over its devastating offensive in Gaza. It has also lambasted Western support for Israel, especially the United States. Turkey also says there are issues that need to be ironed out for Sweden's NATO bid to be ratified. The two presidents also discussed the issue of modernizing Turkey's F-16 fighter jets. The Biden administration backs a $20 billion sales of F-16 jets despite objections from the U.S. Congress. Gaza's health ministry reports nearly 19,000 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli strikes since October the 7th. Telecommunication services have been cut in Gaza once again due to the Israeli offensives. Gaza's media office says the communication blackout means more difficulty in reaching the dead and the injured. Arnoor Harazin has more.
Talking about the latest here in Middle Gaza, this is actually a leaflet that was thrown by the Israeli drones on Al-Nusayrat refugee camp, Deir al-Balah, also in Khan Yunis. They actually, the IDF put the photos of some of Hamas leaders. We have Yahya Sinwar. They actually priced him at 400,000. We have Muhammad Sinwar, Rafi' Salama, and also we have Muhammad Al-Daif at $100,000. They left an email, they left a phone number asking the people of Gaza to contact them if they have any information about the locations of these leaders. And since these leaflets were thrown on Gaza, and the people are questioning the fact if Israel actually can locate or know where Hamas fighters are, they are having these thoughts that maybe eventually Israel will invade all of the Gaza Strip looking for the Hamas fighters, putting the lives of 2.3 million people in danger under the justification of looking and attacking Hamas. All of this is happening while the Gaza Strip is going through its worst humanitarian crisis. I mean, there have been statements from the World Health Organization, the UN, the MSF, the Health Ministry here in Gaza about the deteriorating situation. I mean, now we're talking about the spread of diseases, bacteria, diarrhea, especially among kids inside shelters in UN schools or inside shelters in hospitals. The environment here in Gaza is not healthy anymore. If people do not die from the Israeli attacks and the Israeli bombings, they would die of hunger, they would die of thirst, and they could die of the diseases. Especially that there is no medicine and medical supplies available anymore here in Gaza. The very simple painkillers are not even available.
For more discussion, we're joined by Dr. Said Sadak in Cairo. He is a professor of peace studies at the Egypt-Japan University. Good to have you with us, Professor. So with the increasing international pressure on Israel, even from allies such as the United States, how do you see the conflict developing?
This is a 1-century-old conflict. It has ups and downs, big episode at one point, and then silence, and then again eruption. The Battle of Gaza is not going to be the end or the last showdown. It is a chapter in a very long conflict. What is making this conflict continue and expand is that it has many supporters of both sides. So you'll find demonstration supporting Israel in California, in front of another supporting the Palestinians. And it is not limited to the geographical area of Gaza and Israel, but it goes beyond that. You see attacks in Iraq, in Lebanon, even now in Yemen. The disruption of the Red Sea naval ships, this shows you that this is continuing. And so we don't see that this conflict is going to end soon, especially with the American taking total side with the Israelis. They participate. I mean, the American president, American officials participate in the war cabinet of Israel. So they are not neutral. They are part of this. And they are still wanting to invest in Israel as a Superman of the Middle East, the bully of the Middle East. And that started in 1948 when many of the countries in the area were beginning to decolonize, and the Americans thought that the whole area may turn into communism. And remember, the first country to recognize Israel was the USSR. And so that was the idea, that we have a stick in the Middle East to control all those countries. Today, many of those countries are in good relationship with the United States. They are not enemies of the United States. So the strategic importance of Israel is declining. But still, you have many factors like domestic affairs, political strategic alliance with Israel that keeps supporting Israel and providing them with arms, economic assistance, and diplomatic veto at the United Nations Security Council. And they support this violence, this genocide in Gaza. And it seems that they want to follow what Israel wants, which is expulsion, transfer of the Palestinians away from the land.
Well, Professor, there seems to be a tussle between the Israeli and American ideologies on how Gaza should be governed after the conflict. How do you make of the enclaved future?
We always look at the behavior, not the rhetoric. The rhetoric we are hearing from President Biden, from some American officials, is one thing. And at the same time, we see America is exporting more ammunition to Israel, using the diplomatic veto at the UN Security Council to prevent any ceasefire. And so I have to deal with what is happening on the ground, not what they are trying to show. Of course, American public opinion is beginning more and more less supportive of Israel and American foreign policy. And so if you see what the American administration is doing, make some statements here critical of Israel to try to please those elements that are not happy with the foreign policy. And they know that it can affect also the election, the presidential election next year. And so they are making those statements. But I do not get fooled or drugged by those rhetoric, because I still see American hard-line support of Israel continues and doesn't stop.
Thank you so much, Dr. Said Sadak in Cairo. Appreciated your analysis. Well, time now for a look at some other major stories making headlines beyond Asia. The